बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू। मेरा आज का मौजू है विलायत अमीरुल मोमिनीन। और विलायत अमीरुल मोमिनीन की जो सबसे बड़ी सनद है वो गदीर के मकाम पर रसूल का कहना मन कुंतो मौला फहाजा अलीउल मौला। और ये है वो हदीस जिसको हर कोई मानता है। किसी भी फिरके इस्लाम में कोई भी मुसलमान हो इस हदीस को जुतलाता नहीं है। सब इस बात को मानते हैं गदीर में रसूल ने मौला अली का हाथ उठाकर काटा, लेकिन मसला ये है कि मौला के मायने में इख्तिलाफ है। हमारे सुन्नी ब्रादर मौला के मायने दो समझते हैं, आका नहीं। अब ये तो आपकी ज़ौक़ की बात है कि आप रसूल को आका समझते हैं क्या दोस्त। मौला अली के बारे में फैसला बाद में कीजिएगा, पहले रसूल की बात है। रसूल ने कहा मन कुन तो मौला, मैं जिस का मौला हूँ। हम पहले इसको ट्रांसलेट करते हैं कि आप रसूल को रसूल समझते या क्या दोस्त, रसूल को हाकिम समझते रहे या दोस्त, रसूल को आका समझते रहे या दोस्त। जो रसूल को समझते रहे वो अली को समझे। आए आपने रसूल को दोस्त समझा तो अली को भी दोस्त समझते रहे। हमने रसूल को आका मानना तो अली को भी आका मानते हैं। सलावत। एक दिन एक शख्स मौला के पास आया और पूछा कि मौला मैं जन्नती हूँ या नहीं हूँ, और जन्नत में कौन जाएगा। मौला ने फरमाया जन्नत में वही जाएगा जो अली की विलायत को तस्लीम करता है। तो वो खुश होकर कहने लगा या अली मैं तो आपका विलायत का मानने वाला हूँ। तो मौला ने जवाब दिया नहीं, तुमने अब तक मेरी विलायत को समझा है नहीं। तो कहने लगा मौला क्या मतलब। मौला ने कहा अशहदु अन्ना इलाहा इल्लल्लाह मुहम्मद रसूलुल्लाह के बाद अली वलीउल्लाह व खलीफतु बिला फसल, मुझे आपका वजूद को जानता हूँ। तो मौला ने कहा ये इकरारुल बिल्लिसान है, तुमने मेरी विलायत का ज़बान से तो इकरार किया है, लेकिन हमने कहा हमारी विलायत को दिल से तस्लीम करना है। और विलायत का इकरार करना दो अलग चीज़ें हैं। सिर्फ मानना नहीं है, मानना और है, तस्लीम करना और है। जब तक तू तस्लीम के मकाम तक नहीं पहुंचता तब तक तू मेरी विलायत का मानने वाला नहीं है। कहने लगा मौला क्या मतलब। मौला ने फरमाया विलायत का मतलब ये है कि अली की हुकूमत का मानने वाला। 25 साल मुझे हुकूमत ना मिली, इसका मतलब मेरे पास कोई विलायत नहीं है। हमारी विलायत कोई ज़ाहिरी विलायत नहीं है। ऐसी मेरी विलायत को मान जैसे पत्थर मेरी विलायत को मानता है, जैसे परिंदे हमारी विलायत को मानते हैं, जैसे दरख्त के पत्ते हमारी विलायत को मानते हैं, जैसे चांद हमारी विलायत को मानते हैं। तो तुम्हारी आँखों को निकाला जाएगा, तुम्हारी ज़बान काटी जाएगी। तो मौसम इंतज़ार करता है कब अली की विलायत पूरी होती है। जैसे ये सूरज हमारी विलायत को मानता है। सो उस शख्स ने सवाल किया कि मौला वो कैसे आपकी विलायत को मानते हैं। तो फरमाया अगर हम उंगली से इशारा करें तो चांद दो टुकड़े हो जाते हैं, अगर सितारे को इशारा करें तो ये हमारी दर पर आ जाता है, अगर सूरज को इशारा करें तो मगरिब पलट कर आ जाता है, अगर पानी को इशारा करें तो पानी पर मुसल्ला को बिछा कर नमाज शुरू कर देते हैं, अगर ज़मीन पर एरिया मारे तो ज़मीन चश्मे उगलना शुरू कर देते हैं। अगर हम मौसम को ये कब देख मौसम तुम्हारी आंखों को निकाला जाएगा, तुम्हारी ज़बान काटी जाएगी। तो मौसम इंतज़ार करता है कब अली की विलायत पूरी होती है और कब मौसम शहीद होता है। तो ये हमारी विलायत को दिल से तस्लीम करना है। आए इस बाबरकत रात के वसीले से दुआ करते हैं कि अल्लाह हमें भी मौला अली की सच्ची विलायत को तस्लीम करने वाले बनाए। आमीन व आखिरु दवाना अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहि रब्बिल आलमीन। सलावत।
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. زینب کا چہرہ دیکھتے ہیں اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں. زینب کا چہرہ دیکھتے ہیں اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں. عباس کے آنسو پوچھتے ہیں، عباس کے آنسو پوچھتے ہیں، شبیر کو کچھ سمجھاتے ہیں اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں. سر دیکھ کے زخمی بابا کا جب بیٹیاں رونے لگتی ہے، سر دیکھ کے زخمی بابا کا جب بیٹیاں رونے لگتی ہے. بچوں کو تسلی کی خاطر زہرا کا درد سناتے ہیں اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں. زخمی مولا کی آنکھوں میں زخمی مشکیزہ پھرتا ہے، زخمی مولا کی آنکھوں میں زخمی مشکیزہ پھرتا ہے. عباس جری کے ہاتھوں سے، عباس جری کے ہاتھوں سے قاتل کو جام پلاتے ہیں اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں. پھرتا ہے نگاہوں میں منظر بازاروں کا، درباروں کا، پھرتا ہے نگاہوں میں منظر بازاروں کا، درباروں کا. کچھ دیر کو گھر کے آنگن میں، کچھ دیر کو گھر کے آنگن میں زینب کو ساتھ چلاتے ہیں اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں. ایک روز اسی کوفے میں تمہیں بے پردہ حرم کو لانا ہے، ایک روز اسی کوفے میں تمہیں بے پردہ حرم کو لانا ہے. عابد کو لگا کر سینے سے، عابد کو لگا کر سینے سے بازار کا حال سناتے ہیں اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں. سادات کے رونے کی جو صدا پردے سے باہر آتی ہے، سادات کے رونے کی جو صدا پردے سے باہر آتی ہے. پہچان لو ان آوازوں کو، پہچان لو ان آوازوں کو، لوگوں سے کہتے جاتے ہیں، اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں۔ معلوم تھا ایک دن شانوں میں زینب کے رسن بندھ جائے گی، معلوم تھا ایک دن شانوں میں زینب کے رسن بندھ جائے گی۔ ارے شبیر سے کہہ کے قاتل کے، شبیر سے کہہ کے قاتل کے، ہاتھوں سے رسن کھلواتے ہیں، اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں۔ جب نزا کی رچکی آتی ہے، زینب پہ نظر رک جاتی ہے، جب نزا کی ہچکی آتی ہے، زینب پہ نظر رک جاتی ہے۔ اللہ تجھے آباد رکھے، اللہ تجھے آباد رکھے، ہاتھوں ہونٹوں سے دعا فرماتے ہیں، اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں۔ زینب کا چہرہ دیکھتے ہیں، اور مولا روتے جاتے ہیں۔ محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء، حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا، أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين، سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الحكيم: هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة. صدق الله العلي العظيم. آمنا به. نوروا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحبائي, our bahath tonight has to do with part of our theme in regards to misconceptions with the Quran or manipulation of the Quran to generate misguidance on one hand, and on the other hand the personality of Rasulullah. And it is important that on these nights, the nights of Laylatul Qadr between the 19th and the 21st, in that as we commemorate the Shahada of Amirul Mu'mineen, we have the two weighty sources of guidance that were around the life of Amirul Mu'mineen, and that is the Quran and Rasulullah. You notice that throughout history, the prophets, the Anbiya, divinely sent guides, have always been the subject of insults and have always been the subject of mockery and character assassination. And you will find that every one of the Anbiya, from Adam all the way down to Nabiullah Isa, if you were to look into the books of theology, the books of ideology, whether it is corrupted ideology or whether it is false interpretation from Orientalists, you will see that almost every Nabi has been a subject of some sort of character assassination. And the same thing when it comes to Rasulullah. Rasulullah was not excluded from this. And you know, character assassination is that when you target or you concoct or you propagate flaws in somebody's character. Character assassination, when you attribute wrongful actions to them. Character assassination. And you will see that, subhanallah, in the psychology of the human mind, within psychology, the human mind resorts to character assassination in order to decredit the message that the person might be holding. And you find that this type of shaitani psychology is present even in this day and age. Khasatan when you go into politics. When you go into politics, you find that if a certain person is being attacked, because they can't attack his accomplishments. You can't attack the accomplishment as an accomplishment. So what you will do is, in order to demean and bring down the value of these accomplishments, you will target the character of that person. And you find that Rasulullah was a victim of character assassination from the day that he began propagating the prophecy and the message of Islam from the Meccan days by the Quraysh. And then he was target to character assassination, unfortunately, by his own Sahaba, even in Medina, and has been the target of character assassination even during the times after his Shahada. Within his entire Muslim history, you will find that it is unfortunate what is being written about Rasulullah in terms of insults towards his character. If we were to go back towards the Holy Quran, you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala outlines this strategy from the Quraysh of Makkah, that when they wanted to target Rasulullah and they wanted to stop Rasulullah's message from spreading, they would attack his character. The first surah or the first example that we will cite is from Surah As-Safat, verse number 36. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَيَقُولُونَ أَإِنَّا لَتَارِكُوا آلِهَتَنَا لِشَاعِرٍ مَجْنُونَ. They are talking about Rasulullah. Look at what they said to Rasulullah. How did they describe him? Sha'r, Majnoon. Number one is a poet. Number two, Majnoon. He's a crazy person. Look at the response of the Makkans. They didn't have a response to say that Tawheed is wrong. They didn't have a response to say that Allah is the creator of everything in the universe. They didn't have a response to saying that we don't know how to refute back to the eloquence of your message. The message was untouchable. The message was spreading. So in order to put a stop to the message, in order to put a stop to the spread of Islam, because there is no way we can target what he's saying. We cannot belie what he's saying. So the best thing to do is that we will target his character. So they ended up starting by calling him a Shahr, is a poet, and that he is Majnoon. Character assassination. And this has continued throughout Islam. And sometimes, sometimes it's funny, it's ironic that you look, the entire Muslim Ummah, they are ready to enter into protests and demonstrations and riots because one Danish person drew a caricature of the Holy Prophet. And we're not saying that drawing the caricature of the Prophet is something that is accepted. But as intellectuals, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the power of the aql. You look, when these caricatures were being drawn, entire Muslim Ummah from east to west want to rally together. Labbaik ya Rasulullah, riots on the road, and they are burning buildings, cars, this and that. Because a Danish person drew a caricature of the Prophet. But what the Muslims have written about Rasulullah is perhaps 1,000,000 times worse than what this Danish person has drawn. Intum shufu, look at Muslim literature. I have hadith of Rasulullah running on the streets of Medina with his wife on the shoulder. Inta you accept for yourself that your wife sits over here, outside over here in the Jafri complex. You have any one of the mu'mineen, you see him with his wife sitting on the shoulders and they are running. Inta aslan, you will pray namaz behind a person like this? What we don't accept for ourselves, but we want to attribute it to Rasulullah. And therefore, sometimes it is funny, the stance of the Muslims, it almost becomes double standard, hypocrisy, that if a wrong is committed by an outsider, we will condemn it. But if a wrong is committed by an insider, so long as he's Muslim, as long as he's Muslim, it's fine. La, ahbai, we're supposed to be people of dalil and people of burhan, people of a single standard. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Tayyib, from amongst these strategies of character assassination is one that is attributed to Rasulullah, that the Holy Prophet of Islam, wal ayadu billah, was illiterate. And you find that this is a common theme that is taught within mainstream texts of Islamic history, be it here in Africa, be it even in Europe, and this is something that is widespread even in the Middle East, whether it is at a school level or whether it is a madrasa or one of the higher institutions. The mainstream narrative is that Rasulullah was illiterate. And the worst thing about this is that they use the Quran to prove that Rasulullah was illiterate. In fact, not only do they use the Quran, their entire premise is this, that the Quran is a miracle. The fact that the Quran is a miracle, it was revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is a miracle because Rasulullah was illiterate. Had Rasulullah known how to read and write, people would have said that this is the writing of Rasulullah. So the fact that he's illiterate and he came with a divine book out of nowhere, this proves that the Quran is the divine word of Allah and that Quran is the miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us analyze this fact that is presented to us by mainstream history. Is Rasulullah or was Rasulullah illiterate or not? And number two, does it mean that in order for us to prove the superiority of the Quran and the miraculous nature of the Quran, it has to be at the expense of the literacy of Rasulullah or no? Let us analyze this over the next few over the time that we have for tonight's majlis. All of this with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Tayyib, number one, Ahibba'i Ishkal. Is our understanding of the Quran so weak that in order to prove its superiority, you have to say that the Prophet was illiterate? This is how weak our understanding of Quran is. And who said that it is an if and or process? Who said that in order for the Quran to be a miracle, the Prophet has to be illiterate? Why can Rasulullah not be the peak of intelligence and wisdom and literacy, and the Quran is also a miracle? Who told us that we have to choose between the two of these? But again, the main point over here is this, which really requires contemplation. Is our understanding of the Quran so weak? Is the burhan and the proof within the Quran so fragile that we cannot prove that it has emanated from Allah until and unless we say that the Prophet was illiterate? What understanding of Quran is this? See, Bain al-Qawsayn, and I will move on. The miraculous nature of the Quran and the divinity of the Holy Quran can be understood from a number of dimensions, from a number of perspectives. I want to touch only two or three. Number one, the superiority of the Quran in terms of its divine nature is established through the grand, sound, logical arguments that are provided within the Quran. The Quran is a book that appeals to the intellect, like the way we said, ayatun muhkamatun law kana fihima alihatun illa Allah lafasadata. This is a natural intellectual conclusion that if somebody thinks a little bit, that the perfection within the system of creation that we have necessitates the existence of a single God. This is Burhan Akli. The divinity of the Quran is in the strength of the arguments that are presented within the Quran. This is number one. Number two, Ahibba'i, the miracle of the Quran is its ability to capture deep meanings. Meanings that are constructed from words that are constructed from alphabets that were used by the normal Arabs in their daily conversation. So the alphabets were there, but yet even the most grandest of them, even the most eloquent of them would not be able to put together these words in order to deduce meanings that were deep. And this is the miracle of the Quran, that the single word within the Quran has depth inside of it. And the nature of this depth is that when you listen to it, it pierces the core of your heart and your conscience. This is why you find within Islamic history, when the Makkans used to listen to Rasulullah recite the Quran, even though they were polytheists, they would cry. Did you ever think about this? If you see, I think if I'm not mistaken and memory serves me right, Abu Jahl, a number of times, he would go and he would listen to Rasulullah recite Quran and he would weep. Abu Sufyan and these lot would come back to him, they'd say, have you converted to Islam? He says, no, I've not converted to Islam. But what I can tell you is definitely this is not the words of a human. He said, now what do we do? He said, call him a magician. But this is the point that I'm trying to make. The power of words in terms of the meanings that are deduced and the impact of the meaning on the heart. Otherwise, at the end of the day, words are words. But the impact from the words, this is where the divinity and the revelation is, the divinity of the revelation is understood. Tayyib, this is Bain al-Qawsayn. We come back to our Ahlul Bayt, because we have established that if you try to understand the Quran and you try to understand the deen without Ahlul Bayt, you go astray. For we come back and we see what does Ahlul Bayt say in regards to the literacy of Rasulullah. Shufu Hadith al-Sharif, and this was an argument that was not newly formulated. This propaganda that Rasulullah was illiterate had started from the time of Muawiyah and even up till the time of Imam al-Jawad. We have Hadith al-Sharif within our books where there is a companion by the name of Ja'far ibn Mohammed al-Sufi. He says, Sa'altu Aba Ja'far, yani Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam. Salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. He said, فَقُلْتُ يَا ابْنَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ لِمَا سُمِّيَ النَّبِيَّ الْأُمِّي. Why is the Prophet called Ummi? Nabiyul Ummi. This is what Rasulullah, one of his titles is the Nabiyul Ummi. So Ummi, these people translated, look at what the Imam says. So he asked the Prophet, why was the Prophet sent as Ummi? The Imam didn't reply back. But what did the Imam say? The Imam said, Ma taqulun nas. Imam al-Jawad is asking the Rawi, what are the people on the street saying? See, within this there is even importance that Imam Jawad, as the Imam and the leader of the nation, the leader, divinely appointed leader of the nation, he is also in touch with the views and the opinions of the people on the ground. The master, the Imam, does not remain aloof. Public opinion is important in these things, and Imam al-Jawad teaches us this. So he says, what are the people saying? Ma taqulun nas. Rawi replies back and saying, يَزْعَمُونَ إِنَّهُ سُمِّيَ الْأُمِّي لِأَنَّهُ لَا يُحْسِنْ أَنْ يَكْتُبْ. He says the people say that Rasulullah is known as Ummi because he is illiterate, he is not able to read and write. Look at the response of Imam al-Jawad. قَالَ كَذِبُ عَلَيْهِمْ لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ. This is deep, huh? And the Imams are Imams of tolerance. The Imams are Imams of peace. For an Imam of tolerance to send la'na on somebody because of the extent of the character assassination and the insult upon Rasulullah. He says, la'natullahi alayhim anna dhalika wallah yakul fi muhkam kitabih. Now Imam al-Jawad uses the Quran to prove that Rasulullah was at the peak of literacy. And he quotes Surah Al-Jum'ah verse number 2, where Surah Al-Jum'ah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Huwa alladhi ba'atha fil ummiyina rasulam minhum. It is from amongst the ummiyin. By the way, ummiyin over here means ummiyin from Ummul Qura. Ummul Qura is a title of Makkah. So when you call somebody, or when Rasulullah is referred to as Ummi, yani in other words Makkan. Just like the way if somebody was from Medina, you say Madani. Somebody is from Kufa, you say Kufi. Somebody from Karbala, Karbala'i. Somebody from Ummul Qura is called an Ummi. So Allah is saying, Huwa alladhi ba'atha fil ummiyina rasulan minhum. It is He, yani Allah, who sent a Rasul from amongst the Makkans to do what? Yatlu alayhim ayati. Yatlu alayhim ayati, to recite upon him. What's the translation? Yatlu alayhim ayati. Recite. Recite, meaning recite from a book. If you are not able to read and write, what are you reciting? Yatlu alayhim ayati. وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, and He purifies their nafs. وَيُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ. يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابِ. He teaches them a book. Have you seen somebody who can teach you a book? And we know the meaning of the word book from last night's majlis. Can you teach somebody a book when you yourself cannot read and write? Which book are you teaching if you can't read and write? أي مشكلة بني آدم. millions and millions of Muslims, every Friday, all of us, we want to recite Salatul Jum'ah, Salatul Jum'ah, Salatul Jum'ah, Salatul Jum'ah. Baba, we want to recite Suratul Jum'ah. In Salatul Jum'ah, the same surah is telling you that the Prophet is the peak of literacy, the peak of wisdom. Yet Muslim wants to say, no, Prophet was illiterate. This is why the Quran is a miracle. The same Quran that you recite is Prophet sending la'na on you. And this is a serious issue in terms of why cognizance and understanding and awareness within the Muslim Ummah. We cannot be blind followers of the book. The Quran itself says over here, يُعَلِّمُهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ, wisdom. Rasulullah is supposed to teach you wisdom, but you're supposed to take wisdom from somebody who is illiterate. Blind following is dangerous. And you find this inside of Suratul Jum'ah itself. This was not part of it, but tazama sometimes what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. Again, Suratul Jum'ah, Mathalul Ladina, this is verse number 5. I don't think I gave this to the AV team, but if they can pull this up, Jazahumullah khair. Mathalul Ladina hummilu Tawrata, thumma lam yahmiluha, kamathalil himar, yahmilu asfara. Allah over here is talking about Bani Israel. But he's using Bani Israel as an example for the Muslims. What does he say? And those who carry the Tawrat, yani the knowledge of the book upon them. مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ حُمِّلُوا التَّوْرَاةَ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَحْمِلُوهَا. Those who have the knowledge of the book, of the Tawrat, of the Quran, they have the knowledge, but they don't implement the knowledge. كَمَثَلِ Himar. Do we have the verse up here? Himar. What's the translation of Himar? Majamani, fikiria. There is a verse of the Quran that has come down upon the Sahaba, upon the Muslims, where Allah Rabbul Alameen is saying that these people are like pundas. In fact, the word punda in Gujarati, even I think it hits differently. What's punda in Gujarati? Allahu Akbar. Can you fikiria that you are walking in Medina and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed a verse of the Holy Quran saying that these jamas, badaya je aya che ne, masjid ma bhega tya je gadera che. Think about it. It's not an easy thing. And this we say, Allah, Rahman, Rahim, Ghafoor. But there are certain things, Baijan, when you stop using your bongo, Rabbul Alameen is saying this Jama is a punda. For this reason, yesterday we were saying when Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal faraja, showed them the copy of the Quran that he had written with the tafsir. One of them opened the Quran and he opened the Suratul Munafiqeen. And in the tafsir of Suratul Munafiqeen, Amir al-Mu'mineen had written down in whose name these ayahs have been revealed. This was revealed for Fulan, this one for Fulan. So if we had that copy of the Quran, we would even know from amongst the ashab how many of them are pundas and gaderas. And so they said over here, La hajat lana fi hadha. This one, bana maneno tafashio. He's going to expose us. But ahibai, this is the reality. And our duty is not just to line up mechanically on Friday for reciting Salatul Jum'ah or memorizing the Quran or just reciting the Quran mechanically. It's about understanding the deep message within the Quran. I think if any of us were to be called, even within our friends, if somebody was to call you a punda or a gadera, you take this offensive. Say, imagine this emanating from Rabbil Alameen. This Prophet who is supposed to give us hikmah. Today you are teaching in your textbooks of Islamic history, If I'm not mistaken, the last time I'd even checked Islamic history within the GCSE courses, it was within their texts over there that this was the unlettered or the illiterate prophet. Mushkil. Imam al-Jawad tells us, La, this goes against the Quran. You have within the Quran itself. In fact, we have another ayah from the Holy Quran, Surah Al-Bayyinah. Within Surah Al-Bayyinah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Verse number 2, Surah Al-Bayyinah. Rasulun min Allah. In regards to Rasulullah, the prophet appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yatlu suhufan mutahhara. Ajib. Fiha kutubun qayyimah. This Rasulullah, this Nabi appointed from Allah, who is reading to you from sacred scriptures. Yatlu suhufan mutahhara. If he is illiterate and not able to read and write, then how is Allah telling you in the Quran that he is reading the passages or the scriptures that are divine? Our Islamic history goes against what the Quran is. And this is why we say over here, Tafsirul Quran. Ahibai, you actually find that the Quran, in addition to a book of guidance, in a book that leads you towards contemplation in the creation and everything else, the Quran is a book through which you are able to uncover the seerah of Rasulullah. To close this chapter, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam goes on to say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In reality, كان رسول الله يقرأ ويكتب ب73 لسانا. The Holy Prophet was able to read and write in 73 different languages. وإنما سمي الأمي لأنه كان من أهل مكة ومكة من أمهات القرآن. As we said, he was known as Ummi because he's from Quran. But our Nabi, Shia Ithna Ashari, we believe that our Nabi was not fluent only in one language. He could read and write in 73 languages. And to now start connecting the dots from the previous majalis that we have. Aslan, which Nabi do these Muslimin believe in? Nabi who could not read and write. Nabi who could not even put the Quran together. Nabi who could not even choose a Khalifa. How can this be the most Ashraful Anbiya? The best and the final of all messengers? This is the best that Allah could send to guide mankind. We end up being the same people who are actually insulting Rasulullah more than anything else. Tayyib, you can have ishkal. Somebody comes forward and says, no, we have verses within the Holy Quran through which we are able to deduce that actually the Holy Prophet wasn't able to read and write. And the ayah for reference that they go back towards is Suratul Ankabut. Suratul Ankabut, verse number 48, if I'm not mistaken. Suratul Ankabut, verse number 48. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So this is the verse that they used to say that the Prophet was illiterate. وَمَا كُنْتَ تَتْلُو مِنْ قَبْلِهِ مِنْ كِتَابٍ وَلَا تَخُطُّهُ بِيَمِينِكَ إِذَا لَارْتَابَ الْمُبْتِلُونَ. Shalom, what is the translation of this ayah that is written up here?
And you did not recite before it any book, nor did you transcribe one with your right hand, for then could those who say untrue things have doubted.
Ahsant. So you didn't write and you didn't read, because had you done so, what would have the people said? They would have doubted on you. So this is the verse that is used to prove that Rasulullah was illiterate. See, and this is why reading the Quran, tartil, text on its own, sometimes can be misguiding. Not that the Quran is misguiding, but the ability of our intellect. And the actual way to study the Quran is also through Sha'nin Nuzul. Tafsir of the Quran is so important. Surah Ankabut verse number 48 was actually revealed as a response to an accusation made to Rasulullah, which is in Surah Al-Furqan, verse number 5. So notice how Surah Ankabut verse 48 is actually attached to Surah Al-Furqan verse number 5. Surah Al-Furqan verse number 5, there was an allegation made towards Rasulullah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Waqalu, the Makkans, the Quraysh, they said, Waqalu, in regards to the Quran, they said, Waqalu asatirul awwaleen iktatabaha fahiya tumla alayhi bukratan wa asila. You know what is the translation above?
And they say the stories of the ancients, he has got them written. So
Okay, tamam, 1 second. So they said when they would look at the Quran and they look at the miraculous nature of the Quran, the Makkans would come and they would say, no. This Rasulullah, he has copied this Quran from scriptures of the past. Scriptures of the past, manake the older books of the past. Suhufi Ibrahim wa Musa, we have almost over 1,000 scriptures that were revealed to the previous Anbiya, in addition to the Tawrat and in addition to the Injil and Zabur. Tamam. Then?
So these are read out to him morning and evening.
So he's copying basically the scriptures of the past. They would read to him the previous books, Rasulullah would write it down, and he would come and teach the Makkans basically exported ideology. So this was the accusation that was made to Rasulullah. Surah Al-Furqan verse number 5. The response to this, now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed Surah Al-Ankabut verse number 48, where he said, وَمَا كُنْتَ تَتْلُو مِنْ قَبْلِهِ مِنْ كِتَابٍ وَلَا تَخُطُّهُ بِيَمِينِكَ. It is a response, meaning that there is no evidence for anyone in Makkah that Rasulullah went to Fulan person to learn how to read, and to Fulan person how to write, and to Fulan person to say, what does your Tawrat say, what does your Injil say. He has nobody, because had he learned the scriptures and had he learned and copied and written down any of this information, tomorrow there would be 50 people who come forward and say, hello, this person over here, his message is not original, he's selling your duplicate. The fact that Rasulullah publicly didn't exercise writing or reading doesn't mean that he was illiterate. But even that, when we say he publicly didn't, we have ishkal, because we understand that he was trading on behalf of Sayyidah Khadija. And to be a trader at that time, it would be, you need to have a lot of faith in order to be a regional trader without having basic skills of reading and writing. And you know, he made profits for Sayyidah Khadija. But anyway, that's at a different level. Our point over here is that when somebody uses Surah Al-Ankabut verse number 48 to prove that the Rasul was Jahil, subhanallah, he himself is Jahil. But when he uses Surah Al-Ankabut verse 48, the reality of the matter is when you enter into tafsir, Surah Al-Ankabut verse 48 is only a response to the ishkal or the accusations that were made on towards Rasulullah in Surah Furqan verse number 5, that the message of Rasulullah he is copying and duplicating from the Christians and the Jews. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Far from it, our Rasul. A person comes and says, to end the bahath, where did this ideology come from? Where did this story start from that Rasulullah is illiterate? And for what reason would the Sahabi even concoct lies such as this? The proof for this. This is taken from the Shahr of the Nahjul Balagha by Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazali. It is one of the most, I wouldn't say famous commentaries of Nahjul Balagha. Maybe one of the most published ones, yes, maybe. But it's not definitely one of the most famous ones. Even though it is Mu'tazali, this Shahr commentary of Nahjul Balagha is written by a non-Shia. He's a Mu'tazali. Which is why even our elders within the Hawza Ilmiya, they tell us, be careful that don't get too excited that there is a Shahr of Nahjul Balagha, commentary of Nahjul Balagha written by a non-Shia. Because he is Mu'tazali, a lot of his commentaries in regards particularly to the khutbahs of Amirul Mu'mineen in regards to Tawheed and Nabuwah, the commentary Ibn Abul Hadid is heavily influenced by his Mu'tazali school of thought, and he interprets the words of Amirul Mu'mineen from a Mu'tazali perspective. So even when we rely on these commentaries that are not emanating from the students of Ali Muhammad, we have to take this with a little bit of caution. But in any case, this is a historical fact, far from Aqidah. Shahr Nahjul Balagha by Ibn Abil Hadid al-Mu'tazali. He states this. لما عاد معاوية إلى الشام من العراق بعد صلح الحسن. When Muawiyah returned back to Sham after the Sulh al-Hasan. And you know, it is a mistake to say that Sulh al-Hasan is a peace treaty. It was not a peace treaty. If you go back to the writings of Sheikh Mufid, Sulh al-Hasan, he describes the Sulh as a hudna. Hudna means ceasefire. There is a very big difference between the word peace treaty or the meaning of a peace treaty and a ceasefire. In any case, after the ceasefire with Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, Muawiyah returned back to Sham. And he gave a big khutbah. In this khutbah, he said to the people, he gave a khutbah and he said to the people, send la'na on Abu Turab. Send la'na on Amirul Mu'mineen. So they all congregated and they sent la'na. And then, فَلَمَّا كَانَ مِنَ الْغَدْ كَتَبَ كِتَابًا ثُمَّ جَمَعَهُمْ فَقَرَأَهُ عَلَيْهِمْ. He wrote a speech. In his speech, this is the first speech after the ceasefire with Imam al-Mujtaba. He says, هَذَا كِتَابٌ كَتَبَهُ مُعَاوِيَةٌ. This is a letter, presidential speech, written by Muawiyah. Who is Muawiyah? Sahibu Wahyillah. The one who is affiliated and associated with the Wahy of Allah. Ajib. Alladhi, look at this. Alladhi ba'atha Muhammadan nabiyyan. The one who sent Allah, yani Allah, who sent the Nabi as an illiterate person. La yakra wa la yaktub. He could not write and he could not read. Who is saying this? Muawiyah. Today, a lot of these Islamic textbooks that we find who claim that Rasulullah was illiterate, they are taking their deen from who? From the likes of Muawiyah. What was Muawiyah's benefit in saying this? Shufu, maslaha. He says that Rasulullah kana ummiyan la yakra wa la yaktub. He could not read, he could not write. فَإِسْتَفَى اللَّهُ لَهُ مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَزِيرًا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected and purified from the progeny of Rasulullah somebody who would be his helper and his wazir. وَقَاتِبًا أَمِينًا. And one who would be a trustworthy writer of the Holy Quran. Because this Rasulullah is what we said? Illiterate. So even when the verses of the Quran were being revealed by way of tanzeel, Rasulullah couldn't be able to write them down. As we established yesterday, there was a master copy of the Holy Quran and the wall right next to the member of Rasulullah. So what does Muawiyah say? فَكَانَ الْوَحِي يَنزِلَ عَلَى Muhammad. That the wahi used to come down on Muhammad, on Rasulullah. وَأَنَا أَكْتُبُ أكتبه وهو لا يعلم ما أكتب. Muawiyah says that Allah has selected me to write down the wahi as it was being revealed upon Rasulullah, because he didn't have the capacity to read or to write. So the revelation would come on the Nabi and I would write, and Rasul does not even know what I have written. Yani no one except between me and Allah knows what has been written. This, my friends, is manufacturing credibility for yourself. When a person has absolutely no fadila, there are some things in terms to his lineage. This would be maybe PG, 18 plus. But when a person has absolutely no credibility, he has to manufacture credibility for himself. And in order to manufacture credibility for himself, because there is nothing that he owns in terms of a fadila, his credibility can only be built by putting somebody else down. This is what we are saying, that inside that human Bani Adam, he's got that nas inside of him, that in order to raise himself, he must put somebody else down. He has no merit through which he himself can ascend. And this is the likes of Muawiyah. In order to manufacture credibility for themselves today, you'll be surprised. These people who come in from these funny sects that are growing up and sprouting up, they recite Qasida on Muawiyah. I guess to a great extent it's because we are perhaps maybe not as vocal as we should be. But it is important for us we take from here that Allah Azza wa Jal, Subhana Amma Yasifun, is far greater than to send upon the Islamic nation a prophet who was illiterate. And Allah is far much more grander than for this entire Quran to be transcribed by the likes of people such as Muawiyah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ahba'i, 20th of Shahr Ramadhan. And a night like this is a tough night on Ahl Bayt, on Al Muhammad. And traditionally, Ahba'i, this night, the 20th night of Shahr Ramadan, is a masa'ib where we recite the masa'ib of Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra. Allahu Akbar. Because this is one of the most difficult nights for Sayyidah Zainab. You know, Sayyidah Zainab had a very tender heart. Much as she had sabr, and much as she was at the peak of her strength and patience, at the end of the day, Sayyidah Zainab had a very delicate heart. And every one of the Imams understood how tender the heart of Zainab was. And the masa'ib that Sayyidah Zainab has seen, Allahu Akbar, starting from the day of Saqifa when they were burning the house of Sayyidah Fatima az-Zahra, Ya Allah, Allah. The narrations mention that as the door of Sayyidah Zahra was being burned down, and these lu'ana from Bani Saqifa crushed Sayyidah Fatima az-Zahra between the wall and the door. The narration mentions that Mughira came and he slapped Sayyidah Fatima az-Zahra. At that moment, Sayyidah Zainab was standing in the house together holding the hand of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. She would look up and she would say, "Oh my brother Hassan, why are they slapping our mother Fatima?" Allah, Allah. Which is why on the 19th of Shahr Ramadan, when Abdul Rahman ibn Muljim al-La'in struck Amir al-Mu'mineen on the head with a poison sword, Amir al-Mu'mineen was covered in blood. Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein went running into Masjid al-Kufa to find Imam Hassan on the Musalla, his head covered in blood. The gash on the wound was from the center of his head all the way to to his forehead. Allahu Akbar. He lay there, blood is pouring from the wound, it's covered his face, his beard. Amirul Mu'mineen is coughing blood. Amirul Mu'mineen, blood is coming out of the mouth. Today I saw again inside of the maktal, it says the deepness of the gash on the skull, there was blood pouring out from the nose of Amirul Mu'mineen. He was sitting in the Musalla. Imam Hassan and Imam al-Hussein came. Amir al-Mu'mineen gives the command to Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba to complete and to lead the Salatul Fajr. Imam al-Mujtaba completes it. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, they then gathered towards him, Mohammed ibn Hanafiyah. And according to some narrators, Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, they lifted up Amir al-Mu'mineen. He was not able to walk by himself. The severity of the strike and the intensity of the poison. So he put his hands around Imam Hassan and around Imam al-Hussein. Muhammad ibn Hanafi and Abu al-Fadil supporting. They began slowly taking Amir al-Mu'mineen outside of Masjid al-Kufa towards his home. Allah. Shabab, those of us who have been to Najaf, those of us have been to Kufa, it is almost as if you can imagine, where is Masjid al-Kufa, the mihrab of Amir al-Mu'mineen? And where is the house of Amir al-Mu'mineen? This distance, Allah. They are making Amir al-Mu'mineen walk. He cannot walk. He is supporting himself on Imamain until he came towards a short distance from the house. Amir al-Mu'mineen in a very faint voice called out towards his son, Imam al-Mujtaba, "Oh Abu Muhammad." Imam al-Hassan says, "What, my father?" He says, "From here, oh Hassan, let me walk by myself." Allah. Imam al-Mujtaba says, "Oh my father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, you are not in a state where you can walk by yourself." He says, "Let us help you." Amir al-Mu'mineen says, "No, oh Imam al-Hassan, oh Hassan, let me walk by myself." Imam al-Mujtaba says, "Why this insistence, oh my father?" You know what was the response? Amir al-Mu'mineen said, "Zainab is at the door. If Zainab sees her father in this state, do you know, for Zainab, Amir al-Mu'mineen is everything. Amir al-Mu'mineen is the father. Amir al-Mu'mineen is the mother. Amir al-Mu'mineen is the protector. I am Haydar al-Karrar. Zainab's heart is too delicate. If Zainab sees me in this way, Zainab is going to break." Allah, Allah. I say, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you are worried about how Zainab will react if she sees you like this. Amir al-Mu'mineen, your tragedy is great, but what Zainab had to see in Karbala, she had to see the horsemen trample on the body of Imam al-Hussein with every bone that was broken. Qasam on Allah, Zainab died a death in Karbala." Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. اللهم إنا نسألك بحق أمير المؤمنين وبحق السيدة زينب الكبرى اللهم عجل لولينا الفرج. We pray to Allah by the sake of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidah Zainab to hasten the reappearance of Imam al-Hujjah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the sake of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidah Zainab, Mu'mineen and Mu'minat who have gathered here for tonight's majlis, those of our Shabab lads who are in i'tikaf, those who are following the majlis online. Ya Allah, do not let anybody leave this barga except that you have fulfilled their hajat, Ya Allah. By the sake of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra, Mu'mineen, Mu'minat who are not in the best of health, Ya Allah, you grant them shafa'ah. Ya Allah, bihaqqi Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, give us abundance in our rizq for the affairs of our dunya and our akhirah. Bihaqqi Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra and bihaqqi Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra, Ya Allah, marhumin and marhumat who have passed away, you make their graves into a garden from the gardens of Jannah. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Yaqulu Allah ta'ala, inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma صل علی محمد وعلی محمد وعلی محمد وعجل.
ہے علی مولا علی، 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 ہے علی مولا علی. مومنوں ہے در قرار کا ماتم کر لو، مومنوں ہے در قرار کا ماتم کر لو، مومنوں ہے در قرار کا ماتم